Cloudwear solves one of the biggest problems. It's a problem that we're all familiar with. It's a problem that the press brings up nearly every day. We've all seen the headlines. Cybercrime is growing. It's more of an issue now than it's ever been, and it's now a multi-billion-dollar problem for nearly every industry. And I usually open with a line, something like, imagine a world without cybercrime. But in fact, I even doubt that we can. The press and major conferences and everybody, they seem to be in a state of mind, in a way of thinking that there's no solution to this. And I'm here in the next 10 minutes to convince you otherwise. So the invention of the World Wide Web was a great leap forward in technology, but there were a few flaws in its structure. Very basic flaws. The first, that any user in the world could potentially hack anyone else. And the second, that security features, they're there today, but they're too much of a pain to use. So did you know that nearly every hacker is in a far distant location from the authentic account owner? Our analysis of 10,000 hack events revealed that 98% of the time, a hacker's in a different country altogether. So we asked ourselves, why should a hacker, or why should anybody, have access to my financial or healthcare records from within Russia, North Korea, or Pakistan? Of course they shouldn't. But the problem was, any hacker in the world can very easily spoof their GPS, their IP address. They can make themselves appear to be in London or Tokyo or France within the blink of an eye. So the question is, or really, the reality is, if you can effectively determine the location of a person making a request online, then block or grant access in real time based on that information, you can actually stop these 98% of hacks occurring today. Now, there's a thing in internet today called SSL. And if you've ever shopped on Amazon, if you've ever used online banking, you've used SSL. And what that does is it encrypts communication in transit. But encrypting communication in transit is only half of the problem. You see, nobody can steal your credit card information if nobody can read it while you're passing it to Amazon and so forth. But the bigger question today is whether or not you can trust the party on the other end. Today, you're communicating with a black box, a faceless server. You're communicating with somebody that sells you their Amazon.com or Bank of America. You're communicating with them, and in fact, they communicate with you on that same basis of trust. They trust whatever you tell them. They trust your IP address. They trust your reported GPS coordinates, and that's proven not to be enough. To win, to beat these hackers, we need an entirely new weapon in this war on cybercrime. And my company, Cloudwear, has built exactly that. I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes the same ideas that we presented on the main stage of TED earlier this year. We call this new weapon against hackers Verified Location Technology, or VLT. VLT is a tamper-proof method of determining authentic user locations without relying on GPS, IP, or other sources of information that hackers can spoof. By working directly with the communications infrastructure, we're able to pull in secure, verified third-party location information sources beyond the control of a hacker. Here's how it works. Every company and every wireless device in the world pings third-party devices around it. That's how it maintains communication. Our method triangulates user locations using those third-party secure sources beyond the hacker's control. We operate under a different principle. That is, everybody else accepts the IP or GPS. They accept whatever the device is telling them as truth. That's a pretty foolish thing to do, and $455 billion in annual fraud would prove that right. To solve this cybersecurity problem, Cloudwear is building the world's first high-speed, high-volume, globally verified location platform. And to do it, we've stitched together the world's communications infrastructure. So it's been quite a, quite a journey. Now, it's hard to overstate the importance of location in stopping hacks online. I'm going to use an analogy. Why do all fashion companies want to be on Fifth Avenue? Why do all plays want to be on Broadway? Very simply, it's because location implies credibility. And similarly, if a person in Russia is attempting to access American healthcare records, there should probably be some additional scrutiny in that process. Now, VLT, verified location technology, makes it possible to actually know where a person is when they're making a request. So if you're in Russia attempting to access American healthcare records or financial records or important critical infrastructure corporate data, VLT can actually track and block you as you're attempting to do that. But VLT has another great advantage. 50 years ago, before the web, if you had important data, you would put it in a secure room and you would lock the door. But today your data is on Dropbox. It's available from anywhere in the world with just a username and password. And in fact, that's where so many of the problems originate. So the question is, if you have verified location, if you can restrict access to content by a physical space, can you get back to the same security model that we had 50 years prior, before the web was even around? The answer is yes. So if you have restriction to content by a physical location, you can put physical barriers, physical security in place just like you used to protect your data. So if I'm on a military base, in order to access military content, I have to be on that base itself. That means I now have to break through physical barriers, security guards, cameras, gates, walls, fences, doors, without evading detection, without alarm. In other words, that's not likely. And simply by including verified location in an online system, in an authentication or verification process, you're able to dramatically increase the cost and difficulty of performing any hack today. You force these hacks to move into the United States or into any country of origin where there's a significant, at least certainly in the United States and certainly in Germany and Switzerland and elsewhere, there's an incredible police force that's very, very good at tracking down hackers within the country itself. So restricting access to physical location makes hacks significantly more difficult. Now, to implement and deliver this VLT solution at high speed and high scale, that's been another incredible challenge. And to do that, we've had to invent a new product called location certificates. The location certificates you can think of like a passport. With a passport, as you go to each new country, it's stamped with the country you move to. And every time you move to a new country, the border agent checks all of your prior stamps. But they don't just look at the stamps. They, in fact, compare it against a database. They do an out-of-band verification. And by comparing the stamps that you present them, the stamps that you say are true, to something that they know is true, they're able to dramatically reduce the number of people that get in that probably shouldn't. It's pretty obvious. There's a reason why nearly every country in the world uses this security model to protect their borders. And we're applying the same thing to security with location certificates. So just like an SSL certificate encrypts communication in transit as it moves from user to server and back, location certificates help you understand and trust the other parties themselves. So using a cloud-based algorithm, we actually sign those certificates and enable any business to track and block hackers as they attempt to access critical corporate data online. So it's finally possible. It's finally possible to solve and stop most of these hacks that occur today. But there's still millions of hacks in the US. There's still companies with highly mobile workforces that can't restrict access to data by location. And to solve that, we're working on some really incredible technology that we call ZeroFA. Now, ZeroFA takes the concept of a traditional login, like you have today with your username and password, and combines that with verified location. We take a look at what you're reporting to us, just like the passport I said prior. We take a look at what you're reporting to us, your IP address, which signals your current location in the world. We compare that to what we know to be true. And through that, we're actually able to determine with high likelihood whether or not fraud is occurring right now. And what's amazing about this is a security system that works in the background. It's a kind of two-factor authentication which works invisibly without the user's knowledge. The user doesn't need to interact with it. And by doing that, we're able to take two-factor authentication, which traditionally has about 1% adoption rate, and move that closer to 100%. Two-factor authentication is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly secure. And yet almost nobody uses it. Why? Because of complexity. So by combining traditional login with verified location, we can actually make a huge difference here, and it's a simple solution. Now, Cloudwear's location technology runs in the background, and by doing that, it achieves a vision that security experts have been dreaming of for years. That's the big idea. When we can infallibly distinguish between user location and hacker location, you can stop most of the hacks today. You can strike a winning blow against hackers everywhere. Thank you.